Hello! We are setting up a new bullet journal. This is the mid-year setup for 2022. It was a struggle to figure out what journal I was going to use next. I don't have like a massive collection of journals sitting around, but I have a few that I purchased that I like at a particular time, and I don't purchase with a particular use in mind. For the past few years, I've been in a Mazy Lane journal, but I was looking for a particular color, one in which I couldn't seem to find anywhere, or if I did, it had an image on it that didn't really suit me. So I ended up going with this journal from Archer and Olive. I have lots of Archer and Olive journals, but this is the first time I am using an Archer and Olive journal as my main bullet journal. It fit many of my specifications. I need a vegan leather journal. My journals get incredibly dirty because I carry them around, and also because of the kind of artwork I'm using them for. And so I chose this one from the Plant-Based Bride collaboration with Archer and Olive. All right, let's jump right into it. So I use my bullet journal as part organization, part art journal. So this is going to be a elaborate setup. My mid-year setups or my bullet journal setups are always pretty elaborate. I use this time to really dig in and do something sort of extravagant typically, or time consuming, or something that I'm playing with artistically. That being said, I am going to try to talk about how to simplify these things so that as I go through, if you're thinking I don't have time to do that, maybe you do. You don't have to spend as much time as I'm dedicating to it, but you can do a version of it on your own. I always say I'm not looking for you to recreate my spreads. I am hoping that something in it inspires you and you riff on it and do your own thing. I'm going to talk about the function of the spreads for anyone who is new here, but if you're not new here, the spreads are going to be pretty much the same. And I should say, because I haven't said it, my name is Kanova if you are new here. All right, so this bullet journal setup, mid-year 2022, is inspired by an East Asian wedding invitation. I didn't receive it personally. It just popped up on my Pinterest and I was all in. I went down a rabbit hole and found a ton more of these really elaborate and gorgeous invitations, and I just decided that at some point I was going to put it in my journal, and today is the day. So this is the This Belongs To page and the opening cover. I like to have something beautiful to look at when I open those pages. There's no function, it's pure beauty. So this is meant to mimic or pay homage to the inlaid furniture that comes from that East Asian region. That's really beautiful. I could not find paper that looked like what I wanted to, so I had to create it on my own, and it was fairly simple and straightforward. So I decided that the inlay that I was going to be using was based on, I should say, the abalone shell, which is like a metallic purple blues. If you have the time, I would say, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google them. They're really beautiful shells, kind of look out of this world in some ways. It's hard to believe that, something like that just randomly came from nature. They're really beautiful, and I decided I wanted my inlay to look like that. So I'm using a fan brush, and I am just basically patting metallic color on top of this black paper. I decided to use black. You could probably use any color paper, but I just wanted something a bit more dramatic, so I chose this black paper. It is fairly thin. It's considered like a vellum, but it actually is not a vellum paper, but it's some thin paper that I'm using here. I think it's about 65-70 pounds if you need a reference, but you can use whatever paper you want. I wouldn't go too thick though if you're going to be doing what I'm doing. So I created the paper, and then what I did was allowed it to sit. I created several different sheets, We're going to do a little magic here. I'm not very good at the magic, but here it is. And this is what the sheet looks like. And then we hole punch them down to these tiny little leaves. And we're going to speed things up here, and we're going to start putting the inlaid pattern down. So I cut it into different leaf patterns. There's a floral motif that's going on. I took some time and decided what I wanted to do, what patterns I wanted to create, and I just kept those patterns going and simply placed them onto the notebook. I'm gluing with a permanent glue. This glue is great because it has one end that is thick, that's like, it has a thicker nib on it, so you can do larger things, and then there's a small tiny pencil like nib that's perfect for this. You're probably like, what about your hands? My hands really didn't get sticky in this process. It really went very smoothly. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, I don't have time for this, the quick things I would suggest is if you don't want to make the paper, you can simply purchase a paper that works for you. A metallic paper. I was going for a very particular look. I'm going to do a close-up later on so you can see. It's really hard to see the detail that is happening on that particular setup, but I would say you get your own paper, and also you could use a Cricut or Cricut, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, machine, if you have one, to pre-cut. The hole punching took a while in terms of time, but it's something that you can do just sitting in front of the TV, or if you have kids, it's a perfect way for them to get involved with your process. All right, now we're getting into spreads. I am setting up my key here. If you are new to bullet journaling, there are symbols that are used to make quick work of organizing. I use the symbols that are part of the bullet journal system, and I highly recommend that you read Writer Carroll's book and join his Instagram and YouTube page. It's not as I would say art forward as a lot of my channel is. It's more about the organization, but that's really what bullet journaling is about. It's been a godsend for me in terms of keeping things organized in one place. I've always been very organized, but it's nice to have things sort of in one particular place. So I'm setting up this page with a floral, I guess you could say it's like a floral leaf motif that was inspired by an embroidery fabric that I saw. Once I went down the rabbit hole for this particular setup, I found so many beautiful things, and I am a lover of textiles. If you have been here a while, or if you have been here a short period of time and maybe gone back to see some older videos, I believe it was my January 2021 setup was based on a textile from Mexico. I'm always kind of leaning into different types of textiles, and I was able to fit that in here. I wanted it to be bright and colorful, so this key page, you can just put the key here. You don't even have to put the key there if you have been working with it for a while. And then the year at a glance page, I used washi tape to set that up, and we are moving swiftly because there's so much work that's on each page. But the key page is just to keep things organized, and then the year at a glance allows me to get a full picture view of the of my calendar. I can just go there and really sort of count out the weeks or see how much time. It's very time consuming to set up, but incredibly helpful if you are really using your journal for organization. All right, so this here is my future log. So a future log in bullet journaling allows you to jot down appointments and things that may be happening, you guessed it, in the future. Because we do our setups monthly, we don't have a space when there's something happening in the future. There's no space for it to be, and that is where you put your future log. excuse me, where you put your future log. That's why you use your future log. I will jot down a doctor's appointment that's happening, for example, in August in my future log. And when it's time to do my monthly setup, I simply take those items and transfer them into the setup for the month. I also put things like birthdays here, those things that I need to remember every year. This page, because it's a workhorse page, needed to have some decoration, but incredibly simple. This came directly from, this whole image and setup came directly from a setup, the invitation that I saw, one of the invitations, because there were so many of them. I didn't want to write in the journal because I wanted them to be different colors. This is from the Archer and Olive notebook paper that came from the notebook, and it's been cut down. At first I used a X-Acto knife, but I found that my calendars in my hand were a little bit uneven. So I decided to use the paper cutter, and I don't know why I didn't use it in the beginning, because it was much more efficient and clean. This is the same setup that I used for the first page of the future log. My future log is 4 pages of my journal because I use a full year. So even though we're at the mid-year, the future log is going to have dates for 2023. So my future log starts in July 2022, and then it moves through and we go January through June 2023. In December, I will set up a whole new journal for 2023. That's kind of how it rotates. Some people will use the entirety of their journal. They don't use a full journal in 6 months, so they will do a mid-year setup or a new journal setup whenever their journal is empty. I find that the pages at the back of my journal get great use regardless. I use it for sampling, especially when I'm doing a pop-up, or I'll just cut the pages out to use for other things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the page setup. I usually have a grid space guide page setup in my journal, but previously in my last setup, I figured out that a ruler that I created would be better. And since then, Archer and Olive has come out with a stencil that allows you to make quick work of setting up your spreads. So rather than do a grid space guide in my journal, I am simply using the Archer and Olive stencil to set up my pages. I am not using it here in these particular setups because it just wasn't necessary yet, but that's what I'm doing. So if you're wondering what happened to my grid space guide, that's what happened to my grid space guide. I still have the little rulers that I personally set up for use. It's based on a Maisie Lane journal. I am waiting to see if maybe I need to do that. I don't think I will, because the Archer and Olive stencil is great. That's all I have to say about that. All right, these are my goals pages. I have been shifting and changing how I set up my goals, and I think it's because it depends on what the goals are. My long-term goals are my long-term goals, but my short-term goals sort of shift and change. And one of the things that was great about the beginning of the year is I stopped really looking at my projects from a long-term point of view and really started to distill it down to the simple stuff. And I asked the question, what do I need to do? What can I do right now, basically? What can I do right now without any help or need for other things? And then I created a list of what things I need to do the next things. And so I start sort of putting into place and seeing how things are going to go timing wise. I found that I was constantly not doing something because I didn't have all the pieces in order. And then all of a sudden I'd have all the pieces in order and I had a lot of work to do. And it was just a lot simpler to do the thing and then worry about the others later. This right here is a very elaborate setup for something that travels from journal to journal. You'll see when I finish, you'll see that this is going to take a while to set up. We are sped up, really spread up. I started out wanting to use watercolor, but then the colors just weren't as vibrant as I needed and wanted them to be. So I moved to acrylographs and markers. I'm using a variety of paint markers. I will list them in the comment section, and some Archer and Olive acrylographs as well. This page is, I guess you could call it my list page. I create pockets in my journal because I found that transferring these lists from journal to journal was very time consuming, and I'm always looking for a way to be more efficient. So you'll see at the end I put some pockets on this page and the lists go in there. The type of list, songs that I need to learn, bullet journal spreads. I keep track of bullet journal spreads that I'd like to do, like bullet journal ideas. Anything that you might put in a long list that you can carry from journal to journal, pockets are a great way to do that. So I create an aesthetic page and I put my list right in there. So in terms of doing this simply, you can buy stamps. I'm using markers because I'm wanting to do a lot of incredible detail, but you can create a very similar setup using stamps. Using the stamps and stamping them in a variety of colors can create the same look with a lot more speed and efficiency. The only reason I didn't use stamps, because I have stamps in this shape, is because I wanted to put in a bit more color. I had a very specific look that I wanted for the setup. So I decided to just use markers and my own freehand drawing of these items. I did, however, use the shape of my stencil to create the pattern beforehand and then free drew the design I wanted on the inside. This was extremely time consuming, but I was very pleased with how it turned out. I kind of felt bad about putting the pockets on top of it because I felt like it was exactly how I saw it in my mind on the page. And I have to tell you, that almost never happens. There's always something that is a little bit different or not quite right, but this came together in a way that I couldn't be happier about. All right, let's use a little bit of editing magic because you don't need to see me draw all of these. Voila! Now we're moving at warp speed. I am simply going in with my markers and coloring in, we'll call them scallops, with various colors. I don't use the same colors in each one. Some of them are the same, some of them are different. I'm not being too precious about it. I just wanted a variation of color all over this setup. Next, I'm going to go in with a gold marker and do the bottom of the scallops. They're all going to be exactly the same, have that gold at the bottom of it. Next, I'm going in with some gold metallic paint and I'm just sort of painting over the entire spread, just making it all look a bit more cohesive. Lastly, I go in with my Uniball Gold Signo and trace around it. So I did not realize it wasn't recording while I was making these envelopes, but they're pretty straightforward to make. I simply measured my page, cut out some cardstock in the size that was needed, folded down the sides, and then I used double-sided tape to stick them to the page. To add a little bit of detail, I added some beautiful washi tape. I used the same washi tape in the key, and that was that. I will put my list in those pockets. Alright, this is my year in pictures. You got a bit of a preview because, surprise, I don't always do the spreads in order. Sometimes I do them according to the artwork itself lends itself. Sometimes something is going to be a bit more time consuming, and so I will start with something simpler and then move into the things that are going to take a bit more time. All right, let's talk about my love of Distress Oxide ink. This is from Ranger. I use the color Salty Ocean throughout. I love using it as a background color in my bullet journal. It's kind of like makeup. You can have a light coat, but then you can build it up so you can have more even coverage. I wanted a more cloudy effect, which is so much easier to create with the ink. It also just dries really fast, and I find that it doesn't really affect the pages the way that paint does. All right, so the invitation, the original source that inspired this, had these mandalas throughout, and I wanted to continue to find ways to incorporate all of the beautiful details in the invite on my bullet journal setup pages. Mandalas are great to create on your own. They're very relaxing, but they can be a little bit time consuming. So stamps, I found some stamps that had mandala-like images, and I used those. Let's talk about the function of these spreads. So these spreads are about really a monthly check-in. I post a photo that represents the month, and then I journal about it. I think I first saw this year in picture spread from Amanda Rach Lee. She just posted a photo, but I needed a little bit more, and that's the beauty of bullet journaling. You can just sort of create your own thing. So I call this a ledge. I use a lot of Dutch door setups in my bullet journal, and I find that it's economical. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's economical. So I can create one beautiful piece of artwork or image, and I can use that in all of my weeklies or whatever timing you are using it for. So in this case, it's for my year in pictures. So each month I don't have to create something new. I can use the same artwork. It's incredibly efficient, and also you just get more time to love on the things that you create. Or if you don't love the things you create, then I guess you have more time to loathe it. I'm again bringing back the abalone shell inlay detail here. Just a nice way to keep everything and all the spreads cohesive. I didn't use all the same things. I used a riff of all the different items that I found in the invitations, the thing that inspired me to create a whole spread. This is my favorite part, the final flip, where you get to take a look at the labor that went into creating your spreads for the month. And here we are. I am overall pleased with how these spreads came together. I'm going to give you a detailed shot in a minute, but the quote that you see there says, "The more you let go, the higher you rise. This journal is loved by," and it has my name. I was looking for a quote that sort of represented what the first 6 months of the year was like for me, and that was one of the things I learned, that sometimes when you let some stuff go, you're able to move faster throughout your journal. I'm going to talk a little bit about letting go, because here was a mistake. I didn't talk about it in the video, but when I was doing my pre-drawing, I realized that I had drawn on a page that I shouldn't have, the goals page. I had started a little early, and then I just thought, it works. Why? I don't have to change it. So a combination of just going with the flow, I think, helped me to find a new setup that really works. So my goals end up being sandwiched between the first part of my future log and the last part of my future log. And I think that might be a good way for me to sort of look at things. What is, where I am currently, and then where I need to be. There we are with the pockets, and you can see the cards that go in. They're flipped over because one side is full. The details, this page really comes alive with pictures. Normally I put like a placeholder for pictures, but I think this next half of the year, if there is a need for more than one picture, I am going to allow myself that. Before I was sticking strictly to one photo. All right, you guys, that's it. Now I have to hurry and get my July set up, so hopefully you will watch that video as well. I hope you enjoyed the setup. I hope you find some little tips and tricks that you can use for your journal setups. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in July.